Disclaimer: the views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of USA Global TV and Radio. The content presented is for informational purposes only and is intended to foster open discussion and debate. Viewer discretion is advised. USA Global TV and Radio does not endorse any particular viewpoint and encourages viewers to seek out additional information and perspectives.
Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio, your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Welcome to Saving America. This is your host, Dr. David D. Schein.
As the war in Iran enters week 2 of skyrocketing gas prices, spring break has arrived and the Democrats' shutdown is causing long lines at airports. And the economy lost over 90,000 jobs in February. One of them, of course, Kristi Noem. Let's take a closer look at those and other hot stories. Impact of the war in Iran. The level of damage done to the military infrastructure of Iran is nothing short of amazing. Reports are that over 60% of their missiles and air attack capacity is gone. Their Navy of about 30 ships is gone, as is their Air Force. Sadly, we also have 7 American military dead and about a dozen dead in Israel. The Iranians, lacking all common sense, have sent missiles and drones into about a dozen other countries with little regard to civilian casualties, although you hear the slopstream media lodging false accusations that American allied forces are hitting civilian targets frequently. This actions of Iran has sealed them off from just about any neighboring country that might have provided them some quarter. The current regime is doubling down on being dunces. They just made the Ayatollah's son the new supreme leader. This guy has never had a position in government before and apparently was stupid enough to accept this suicide mission. On the other hand, if he plans to stay alive, he may consider a truce with the U.S., right? Reminds me of that Bee Gees song, Staying Alive, Staying Alive. It is critical that America and Israel continue to degrade the air defenses and launching capacity of Iran so it can no longer damage the U.S. or its neighbors. Unfortunately, market sentiment went wild with the news causing oil prices to basically double in about a week. But that is mostly caused by insurance companies pulling back policies. It has little to do with supply. I am confident that once the war proceeds just a little further, the pinch on the critical Strait of Hormuz will be resolved and prices will drop back to near pre-war levels. As it stands, more than 20% of global oil and liquefied natural gas exports of the world passes through that strait. Given the precision bombing and degradation of Iran's offensive capacity, it should only be a short time before they are unable to attack traffic on that strait. Extremist cells have begun to reveal themselves, so there are some immediate risks here in the United States. In addition to the Islamic terrorist attack in Austin, Texas, there were 2 ISIS-inspired terrorists who threw some IEDs near a protest in New York City. Fortunately, the devices were neutralized and the criminals arrested before anyone was hurt. The story so far is that these 2 radicals were trying to cause more deaths than the 3 deaths at the Boston Marathon in 2013. The disgrace of a mayor in New York claimed that it was due to an attack by white supremacists, despite clear evidence to the contrary. I hope the citizens of New York will wake up and recall him before he does more harm to the city and the country. All Americans must be watchful of terrorist activities due to suspected Iranian sleeper cells that infiltrated this country during the Biden-Harris administration. Our law enforcement needs a watchful civilian population to report suspected risks. Remember, see something, say something. That's not just a slogan, but critical advice to keep our citizens safe. If you've not done it yet, like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Dr. Dave Saves America. Spring break with TSA unfunded. The Dems shut down the Department of Homeland Security weeks ago to protest ICE taking action to protect Americans from criminal illegals. Ironically, ICE was funded separately, so the one thing they are protesting is not shut down. However, FEMA, TSA, and the Secret Service are currently operating without funds. Reports of delays exceeding 5 hours at Houston's Hobby Airport, a hub for Southwest Airlines, with similar delays in New Orleans, hit with the start of spring break. As well, tornadoes ripped through the Michigan and Oklahoma states, killing 8. But due to the Dems, FEMA is not able to help in the recovery. Trump gave the Dems a big gift in firing Kristi Noem at the DHS. Markwayne Mullin, currently a GOP senator from Oklahoma, has been nominated to replace her. Noem is supposed to go to some new position regarding America's relationship with the South American countries. Mullin seems to be popular, but the Dems have continued their ridiculous list of demands in order to reopen DHS. I do believe this may cause the end of the filibuster for the GOP to move forward. News came out that Noem's recent issues just made her too toxic for her to stay in the high-visibility role at DHS. This included a $220 million ad campaign that featured her telling illegals to get out of the country, her premature comments on the Preddy shooting in Minnesota, and her recent contentious appearance before the Senate added to the push to get her out. My advice, the Dems need to take the win here and get the government open. This has to be a campaign plank for the GOP in the critical November elections. The February jobs report is terrible. This is major bad news on the jobs front. America needs about 150 to 170,000 new placements a month to keep the job market healthy. Instead, the report is a loss of over 90,000 jobs. The unemployment rate also clicked up a little from 4.2 to 4.4. While some of this can be blamed on AI, the jobs market has been soft since 2024. Job hunting has been tough for a while, even before the recent AI boom. And it looks even worse now with AI reportedly reducing slots for mid-level white-collar workers as well as some manufacturing and warehouse workers. Major layoffs have been announced month after month. Not all the layoffs are blamed on AI. The retail and restaurant segments of the market have also been struggling. On prior episodes, I've reported on the incredible number of closings from drugstores to supermarkets to restaurants and fast food chains. More bad news for the federal budget. The federal government has continued to run a deficit despite Trump in the White House with control of both houses of Congress. While reports are that the feds have reduced employment, the body count is still dramatically higher than it was 10 years ago. How is this possible? Now the chickens have come home to roost. Not only did Scotus rule against Trump's implementation of tariffs, but the lower courts followed that with orders that the feds begin refunds now, not later. This is a major blow, as the projections are that as much as $200 billion in tariffs may have been collected. The big corporations are going to eat it, and the consumers are going to get screwed as usual. That's my prediction. My other concern is that I support retaliatory tariffs. It makes no sense for us to let foreign products in here with minimal tariffs and countries around the world, including Canada, India, and the EU, charge ridiculous tariffs on inbound goods from the USA. Trump just did it the wrong way, according to Scotus. Gamblers get no payout on the Ayatollah. An audience member asked me to comment on the report that an app called Kalshi will not be paying off those who wagered on Khomeini's death. The site gives players a chance to gamble on various events around the world. The amount in question is $54 million. The site's defense was that it was not good policy to pay off for deaths. The site further explained that they posted that Khomeini would no longer be supreme leader, not that he would be killed to get to that outcome. So rather than paying off, they're refunding the money in the pool or something like that. I know some of the parties in the pool were pretty upset in that they were looking at nice payoffs. On the other hand, I can see the principle behind not betting on someone being killed or dying. However, it does appear that the folks at Kalshi could have done a better job of structuring the deal involved here. As someone who does not gamble, I have no interest in these online gambling sites. However, I also know that millions of dollars are flowing through these sites every year. Perhaps there needs to be some regulation like there is of traditional brick and mortar casinos. So you think AI is weird? Just as we are adjusting to AI, which swept in fairly quickly for most of us, we now have quantum computing on the horizon. The mega ability of this new generation of computers will make all present computers, even the so-called supercomputers, look like a horse and wagon days. At least that's the prediction. On the positive side, the incredible power of these computers could help find the cure for cancer. At least that's what their advocates claim. Now, on the downside, we're already hearing that AI programs can hack computers and run cyber attacks at an incredible rate and can do so without human intervention. Imagine the world with the next generation of computers. So no passwords, no encryption would protect our computers. That would mean no bank accounts, no private information could be protected. The other downside, which we are already feeling with AI, is that data centers are outrunning the electric capacity of most grids in the U.S. Now the companies building data centers are beginning to build their own electric power system. At least we hope they are doing that. Now imagine the power demands of quantum computers. If you've enjoyed this show, be sure to check out my other show, Business Law 101, available on YouTube at Dr. Dave Saves America.
All rise.
Our series, Interviews for Saving America, establishes that the world is full of interesting people. Once you hear from our next guest, I'm sure you'll agree that she deserves the moniker of interesting person. Saving America welcomes Dr. Nelva Lee, who is the founder and CEO of Concrete Build Financing. Dr. Lee was also the CEO of a vocational school for 20 years. Has over 20 years experience in healthcare and over 10 years in academia as an adjunct professor for various universities. Dr. Lee was a Governor Kemp appointed board member to the Department of Community Health. She is the vice chairman of the board of the Henry County Pregnancy Resource Center, Bridge Wellness South, a former Republican candidate for state senate in District 17, and current candidate for Georgia's superintendent of schools. Dr. Lee has authored several Christian-based books, including Stay and Fight and Be a Superhero of Your Own Story. Dr. Lee volunteers at Relevant, her local church, and the Joy FM as a prayer partner. She was a homeschool mom and a substitute teacher for a Christian school. She has a doctorate in healthcare administration from Touro University. She's been married to her best friend, Donnie, for 25 years, and together they have 3 children. We welcome Dr. Nelva Lee for her first appearance on Saving America.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. David. It's a pleasure.
Well, it's our pleasure to have you with us. And Dr. Lee, as you know, you've covered so much in your career and your lifetime, homeschool mom, an author, an adjunct, and so forth. Share with us some of the key moments that motivated you to move from a mom to professor to author to political candidate.
Well, I can honestly say that the career person and the professor came before I became a mom. So I had a pretty thriving career already in healthcare administration before I became a mother. I became a mom, a little bit later in my 20s, so I had a lot under my belt already. The political part, I believe I've always been an advocate. I believe that that's just how God wired me to be an advocate. When I see something that I feel that needs to be fixed, or some sort of injustice, or something that needs some leadership, I believe that God has given me enough talents and energy to be able to be a voice of change in those situations. So that's where my political aspirations come from, just being a lifelong advocate.
And what does the position you're running for, what does that do? How does that impact the school system?
So I'm running for Georgia Superintendent of Schools. And here's the thing, right? The our current state here in the state of Georgia in education is not that good. We rank 38 out of 50, in the United States. Mississippi passed us, right? And 70% of our fourth graders are not proficient in reading. 76% of our eighth graders are not proficient in math. And these are declines under the current superintendent. So we need leadership, and that's what the superintendent does. They provide leadership and guidance and vision. And that is what's lacking, unfortunately, right now. We have laws on the books to address a lot of different issues, literacy issues, you name it, but we just don't have the leadership to implement those things. And so I have a proven track record of being able to be a change agent, a turnaround agent, if you will. And so I believe that that's what I'll be able to lend to the education system in the state of Georgia.
Well, it sounds like there's definitely a need there, and I can testify as a longtime college professor that the entire K through 12 system is lacking. That we're getting
Yes,
students into college who it's hard to believe they've been through high school, and
right.
it's so certainly there's some real need in that area, and I'd like to see 38th become college level, and
Yes,
the people in number one are just like graduate level coming out of K through 12. And that's what we need to be competitive in the world, don't you think?
exactly, exactly. It's not just a
It's a tough
Georgia
world.
problem, unfortunately, but yes, I can definitely
Absolutely
lend
not.
lend my leadership to Georgia for sure.
Sounds like a winner. My audience is familiar with my stance on AI and cybersecurity. Your experience as a board member for the Georgia Department of Community Health has shown you where cybersecurity in healthcare is a constant concern. From your
Correct.
perspective, what do you see that others may miss when it comes to the intersection of technology and healthcare?
So we obviously need technology in healthcare. We Healthcare lags behind a lot of industries when it comes to just being more responsive, technology wise, obviously more responsive financing wise, right? Most people don't know what they're paying their doctors for procedures and the like. So technology definitely has a role to play. When it comes to education, though, I definitely believe we need to take a step back. Children honestly need to go back to the basics, right? Books and paper and pen. They need to go back to the basics when it comes to learning how to read and write. Those the three R's. And I would like to see less technology in those early grades, especially from K to 3, when they're learning how to learn, when they're learning how to read, and they're learning their basic foundation. And so, definitely I want to see more of it in healthcare. I feel that it's sorely needed in healthcare to operationalize and automate a lot of things. When it comes to education, we need to take a step back, especially for the students. They need to have less screen time, definitely less screen time.
Well, let's focus a little bit on that second point about healthcare because we've
Sure.
been talking about education, but I'm concerned because
Hmm.
a person my age, I have a handful of doctors. Every single doctor I sign up with, it's my social security number, it's my
Mm,
address, it's my driver's license, it's my insurance card. And we're putting so much data into it. And I'm sorry, but I don't see them as these particular doctors' offices and hospitals being the leaders of security
got it.
against what we're now hearing is we've got AI invading us, not just individuals. So, how do you see a path forward for that?
You have a real concern because every hospital just about has been targeted by
Yes.
hackers. It really is a serious concern. Hospitals, doctors' offices, they really need to have a very tight ship when it comes to their cybersecurity. Now, is your social security number needed in a hospital setting? I'm not so certain. They need They obviously need your insurance information. I don't believe that they need your social security number. So I could definitely see a path where we have less information that we're giving to doctors. But unfortunately, David, a lot of your information is already out there. You are aware of that, right? So
Oh,
it's
yes.
you
Lots
know
of information.
there's so much data about each and every one of us that's already out there for the hackers, to tamper with. So my best recommendation for individuals is to always have, two-party authentication on all of your personal information, whether it's your banks, you know, um, anything that you want to have truly private, your laptop, your phone, always have two-party authentication on as many things as possible, so that you can have some security there over your own personal information.
Well, I certainly agree with that. And I have received multiple reports that my private information is up on the dark web.
Yes.
And what I've done that anybody can do, it's not super difficult, is I've gone into the three major credit bureaus
Mm-hmm.
and frozen my credit. Now, there have been a couple bumps because I went and applied for something, and they came back and said, well, we can't clarify this. And nobody actually told me, oh, you need to unfreeze things.
Right.
But I also separately have frozen my Social Security number. And you can do that through the Social Security Administration. And that actually prevented me from being certified for work through E-Verify.
Mm, okay.
Nobody told me that. And it was as simple as just saying, yes, you can let this
Person.
university
Right.
pull your E-Verify, and it's only good for like 48 hours or something, so the account stays secure. But
Mm-hmm.
I certainly think that the doubt what's happening is we all have to take responsibility, like you said, with the
Yes.
two-party authentication and things, to make sure that we're doing the very best job we can to protect ourselves, because I'm not sure the cats that we're giving the information to are as secure as we'd like them to be.
And they're trying, but guess what? The hackers are always two steps ahead.
And like
They
I said, is
Mhm.
the AI is making it even worse. They
Even
just
worse. Hmm.
There was a story just in the last 2 days that said that there was an AI hack and it had no human involvement. And
Oh
I'm trying to
wow.
figure out where that went. Like, okay, what would tell an AI system to go do this? So
Right.
I'm not certain that there's really no human involvement.
Well, they're self-learning. They're definitely
Yeah.
starting to self-learn. Yeah, in agreement with you that I believe there was definitely some human involvement, maybe at the beginning in its genesis of the hack.
It's just too much. Dr. Nobley, tell our audience how they can get more information about you, your books, and your campaign.
Definitely. So my website is drnelvalee.com, and that's drnelvalee.com. And all of my books are there. I have links to them. They're all Amazon books published. And then also have my speech, my campaign speech, and lots of different podcasts. And they can, you know, contact me through social media as well. My social media handles are there as well.
That sounds great.
Please proceed.
Justice upside down in Maryland. In a story that sounds more like a third world country than the United States, a judge has ordered the eviction of half the residents of a condominium complex in Prince George's, Maryland, which is a suburb of Washington, D.C. In this crazy story, about 2 years ago, homeless people set up a camp behind the condo complex. By late 2025, apparently they did enough damage to the boiler, also behind the complex, that it caused the heating system for part of the complex to fail. Instead of the county taking responsibility for not removing the camp before the vagrants did that damage, the county got a judge to evict about 100 of the residents. Yes, the people actually had the right to be there are being evicted. To add insult to injury, the county has reportedly delivered food to the camp. Further, local police have not taken any action to arrest the wrongdoers, which may include drug dealers as well as others committing illegal activities. Part of the challenge is that in a condo association, the residents have to pay for capital repairs in addition to normal maintenance. The association in this case claims that it does not have the money to make the repairs required by the damage done when the people in the camp caused a fire that damaged critical infrastructure of the condo complex. When you hear stories like this from a blue state, it helps to understand why people are moving to red states like Texas and Florida. I don't think the story above would happen in most parts of those states. $1 million verdict in a detransitioner case. We have heard some strange stories from the years under the Biden-Harris administration promoting trans procedures for children as young as kindergarten. My position's been consistent. No for children, but adults can make their own decisions. Part of the reason for my view is that I have had kids and now have grandchildren. They're kids. They do not have the perspective of adults, nor should we expect them to get there before adulthood. In any event, I've been expecting just what happened in court recently. A 16-year-old woman had her breast removed as part of a transgender procedure. As an adult, she has now sued the psychologist and surgeon for medical malpractice. She won a $2 million jury verdict in a 3-week trial in a New York court. This type of verdict could put the final nail in the movement to transition minors in the United States. Dementia risk reduction through music. I found an article recently about reducing dementia risk through music. It is certainly no secret that our population is aging. Research reports seem to come out weekly that predict that a significant percentage of that aging population will suffer from dementia, earlier or later. We have heard that being involved in various activities and having people around you may help delay its onset. None of us like the prospect of living out our golden years without really enjoying them. Certainly none of us want to be a burden on our families. I saw a recent report about music delaying dementia and decided to review some of the research on the subject. Possibly playing instruments or just enjoying music may help. A study published in the International Journal of Geriatric Psychiatry found that playing an instrument was associated with a 35% lower risk of dementia. Those who reported always listening to music had a 39% lower risk and scored better on overall cognitive and memory tests. These are some big numbers in terms of improvement versus the devastating impact of dementia. In reviewing other studies, there's a growing body of evidence that all different forms of leisure activities keep the gray matter active and seem to contribute to a reduced risk of dementia. Hey, I'm a news junkie, and I hope that keeping my brain occupied with the world happenings and analyzing them will have a parallel effect to listening or playing music.
How does the defendant plead?
More disturbing news on Russiagate. I've been holding back on my comments on Russiagate since there's been no indictments yet. However, this past week, FBI Director Kash Patel reported that an employee found thousands of relevant documents in so-called burn bags. This is consistent with these recent reports that some dirty folks in the FBI, along with unnamed deep state conspirators, helped to hide the real Russiagate scandal from the public. The newly discovered docs were turned over to Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley. I am not a fan of Chuck, who is about as fresh as a banana that's been on the counter for a few weeks. Let's see what he does with this information. Many conservatives out there are upset that there have been no indictments yet.
Please raise your right hand.
Business students, business persons, or consumers, business law impacts much of what you do. This segment is designed to help you get past the headlines on key stories. Court upholds interim suspension for students for Justice in Palestine chapter for prohibited 10-day tent demonstration. Many such protests have been in the news, but court rulings like this one are rare. The student group sued U Vermont for violation of the First Amendment over suspension of the group's recognized student organization privileges. The federal court in Vermont granted the university's motion to dismiss, concluding that even if the facts were as the student group claimed, they would not meet the requirements of the First Amendment. The ruling was based on the following positions by the university: disruption of scheduled tabling and other reservations of space outside the Davis Center, disruption of normal student engagement and or academic work patterns, setting up tents on the Davis Center green without a permit and declining to remove them when requested, overnight occupancy of a temporary structure, and encouraging and facilitating the violation of policy by other students. The court relied on a 1972 Scotus case of Healy versus James, where the court considered whether a college violated the plaintiff's free association rights when it denied recognition of their student group. Ultimately, the court remanded the case for reconsideration of the plaintiff's claims in that case, as it was unable to conclude from this record that petitioners were willing to abide by reasonable campus rules and regulations. Healy noted that recognition of a student group, once accorded, may be withdrawn or suspended if the petitioners fail to respect campus law. So that's the key decision here. The court held that student group access to university property, resources, and recognition was a limited public forum in which the government's actions as property owner need only be reasonable and viewpoint neutral. And the court concluded that these actions here of U Vermont were indeed reasonable and viewpoint neutral. To quote the court, under appropriate circumstances, a permitting requirement governing the use of public open space can further a legitimate interest in the regulation of competing uses of that space.
Hey, if you've enjoyed our content here on Saving America, be sure to check out our new site on Patreon, and that is going to be Dr. Dave Saves America on Patreon. Be sure to check it out for additional content.
Objection, Your Honor.
The Supreme Court blocks lower court order which could have forced the Trump administration to rehire 16,000 probationary employees. In the high-profile immediate case, Scotus blocked a San Francisco federal judge's order to return 16,000 probationary employees to work at a half dozen federal agencies. However, reports are that there are many on administrative leave, which means the taxpayers are still taking a hit. Further, another federal court in Maryland has an order now being appealed that impacts 24,000 employees, including this 16,000 from those other agencies, plus a dozen more agencies. So this fight is far from resolved. The legal reasoning in this SCOTUS ruling was that the plaintiffs in the case did not have standing. That means the specific parties bringing the lawsuit did not have a dog in the fight. The 9 plaintiff organizations were public sector unions and environmental advocacy groups. By making the rulings on the issue of standing, SCOTUS avoided examining the underlying legal right of the executive branch to terminate federal employees in this manner. The decision stood out since observers have cited the Trump administration's 2 other recent wins before SCOTUS. SCOTUS supported the Trump administration on ending funding for some teacher training programs. The High Court also lifted an order that froze deportations under an 18th century wartime law, the Alien Enemies Act, which will allow deportation of criminals here illegally. A variety of legal sources challenge the ability to use this pre-1800 act in such an unusual manner. That is because it has only been used 3 times: the War of 1812, World War I, and World War II. It is particularly well known for the internment of Americans of Japanese heritage during World War II. Today, the administration's argument is that the gangs such as TDA and MS-13 represent an enemy invasion.
May I remind you, you're still under oath.
Is the climate change hoax finally over? Let me start with an important disclaimer. We all need a healthy environment. We need clean air, clean water, and to be protected from harmful substances. I remember participating in the first Earth Day in 1970. I've been an active recycler ever since. I also personally observed the impact of the Environmental Protection Act, the EPA, also passed in 1970. In the 1980s, as a runner, I observed streams springing to life that had been stripped of all wildlife due to pollution. We no longer heard reports of smog in Los Angeles, bad air in Denver and Pittsburgh. However, I also bitterly remember the early hysteria. Here I am, a scholarship student, the oldest of 7 kids, made it into an Ivy League college. I was assigned to read The Population Bomb, published in early 1970, which promised that the world, at 6 billion people, many would then starve to death, especially children.
Today we have 8.25 billion people. There is ample food. Now, there's a distribution problem and a governance problem, but not due to lack of food production or the ability to make food. Then the Chicken Littles ran around. Instead of saying the sky is falling, they were saying that global warming would cause the oceans to rise and swamp most of the coastal areas of Earth. When it did not happen, over 20 years of hysteria, the failed politician Al Gore decided to become famous, flying around in his private jet. The term global warming was replaced by simply climate change. The claim of the Chicken Littles was now man-made climate change would wipe out civilization by a particular date. Not a single predicted date has come true. Not even close. Of course, instead of admitting that they are wrong, the crazies keep resetting the doomsday date time after time. Who's promoting this hoax? Not just in the U.S., but the entire developed world. Sometimes referred to as the elites. These folks have caused many countries to act contrary to the welfare of their own citizens. Countries can run out of food if they stop using fertilizer, pesticides, and effective power sources like nuclear and natural gas. A number of European countries shut down power plants, banned modern growing methods, and implemented other changes that caused costs to skyrocket for their own citizens, and yet they made no documented progress on the fake goals that they established for avoiding climate change. A classic example of this self-destructive ideology is the silly labeling of CO2 as a pollutant. Folks, this is carbon dioxide. It is what plants use to grow. One stat I saw the other day that helps to further document this hysteria: the far-left Washington Post laid off 1/3 of its climate change reporters. They kept 12. Really? This is propaganda, not news, which is why the Washington Post has recently garnered so much bad publicity. Relating back to the population bomb, recent studies have shown that most developed countries, especially Japan, but also now including the United States, are not replacing their population. We are actually depopulating. Why do we care? Because in most countries, people are living longer. Who is going to take care of them in retirement? Who will continue to work to generate revenue and produce food for those who have retired? Amazing, isn't it, how in 2 generations the perspective is quite different. What are the origins of the climate change hoax? Well, power-hungry liberal elites, of course. They use the data that they cherry-pick and ignore the big picture. Folks, when I talk about this in a classroom, I draw a line across the whole width of a whiteboard, a whole wall. At the very end of the line, I take a piece of paper and I hold it perpendicular to the wall. The whole line represents the age of the Earth, about 8 billion years. The tiny width of paper represents the recorded weather history of about 150 years. This is simple. No sensible person can take a tiny snippet of weather and project what will happen in the next few decades. Natural forces like the sun, the moon, and volcanoes have far more impact than man. Weather appears to be quite cyclical over long periods of time. There have been ice ages over the last 2 millennia. So while the elites were claiming that there would be this big meltdown impacting the Arctic, suddenly the winter of 25-26 has hit. Some are referring to it as a record in snow event. It's not a real record, it's a recent statistic. This is called weather, not climate change. Sadly, I saw an estimate recently that, unbelievably, the world has flushed $16 trillion down the toilet due to this hoax of climate change. Imagine how those resources might have been allocated for providing food to the needy, developing better medications, curing cancer, and so forth. I believe the USA has started to come to its senses. Hopefully, Europe will wake up soon.
In the meantime, the CCP has been building coal-fired electric plants at a mad pace. In the recently discredited Paris Accords, China was given some form of dispensation as a developing country. Did that make any sense? China is competing with the United States to be the largest economy in the world. How could they be flagged under the Paris Accords as a developing nation? Come on, folks, let's get with it. President Trump has done his part to try to control the madness. Many of the Biden-Harris and even Obama-era environmental restrictions have been lifted. My favorite was dumping the car ignition kill switch, finally. This ridiculous device turned off your car at every stoplight and then restarted it. This did not help pollution and certainly did not help gas mileage. A car uses a big blast of energy to start. Similarly, the attack on gas appliances made no sense. Natural gas is both plentiful and clean burning. I hope the world is going to return to sanity soon. Let's stay focused on resolving pollution, which is becoming more of a third world problem. We may not be able to control the weather, but at least we can live in harmony with it.
Hey, if you've enjoyed this episode of Saving America, be sure to check out my book, Bad Deal for America. And we talk about both parties sending morons to Congress, and we need to do something about it, and it's called Getting Term Limits. Books available in hardback, paperback, and a great audio version. Check it out at Amazon.
Silence in the court.
Our series Interviews for Saving America establishes that the world is full of interesting people. Once you hear from our next guest, I'm sure that you will agree that she deserves the moniker of interesting person. Saving America welcomes Grace Stark, who is the editor-in-chief of Natural Womanhood, the magazine of fertility awareness and women's health, and host of the Natural Womanhood podcast. NW is a Texas-based nonprofit organization with a global reach dedicated to the belief that all women can learn to claim their natural fertility as beautiful, powerful, and healthy. She's also a freelance writer, editor, and speaker with interests in women's health and bioethics, holds an MA in bioethics and health policy from the Nieswanger Institute for Bioethics at Loyola University, Chicago, and a BS in healthcare management and policy from Georgetown University. She is a former Ramsey Fellow at the Center for Bioethics and Culture. She's also a former Robert Novak Journalism Fellowship recipient. To date, her work has been featured in Newsweek, Human Life Review, National Review, the National Catholic Register, The Federalist, and the Daily Signal, among others. Earlier in her career, she worked for the Food and Drug Administration and the Department of Veterans Affairs. We welcome Grace Stark for her first appearance on Saving America.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, we're delighted to be able to get you scheduled in here. And as you know, we ask 3 questions. And our first one is, this is it. We talked briefly before we started recording. Many couples seem to be facing fertility issues today. Is it more common, or are we just becoming more aware of it as a society?
I think maybe a little bit of both. I think it's important to have a historical perspective. Generally, when famines happened, fertility wasn't very high either. But we do see kind of an increased awareness and maybe even increased issues with getting pregnant. We know that sperm counts are down. There's all these kind of like headlines about how it's taking couples longer to get pregnant. Miscarriages seem to be more common. It is hard to parse out. Do we just know more versus is it actually harder to get pregnant? And I think kind of the big bogeyman really is that people are trying to get pregnant a lot later in life than we were, a few generations ago. And we do know that especially for women, fertility does start to decline in the late 30s and early 40s. And we're not seeing women getting married until, early to mid 30s and starting to try a lot later. And so that's definitely part of it too.
I have to sneak a quick question in here on sperm counts.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, it always seemed that it was the woman who was the focus of fertility, and the guy would kind of bop along as, oh yeah, I'm fine. It must be her problem. But the reality is that it takes two to tango, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we need to be taking a full, getting the full picture when a couple is trying and struggling to get pregnant. We need to be doing a full evaluation on the woman and the man, because in a good chunk, a good portion of cases, it could be male factor infertility only, or it could be a combination of female and male factor. So it's super important to, yeah, include the men in this too.
Sounds like a good point. The popularity of IVF makes it seem that if a couple cannot get pregnant quickly, all they need to do is schedule an IVF session. Is it really that simple?
No, it's not. And I think it's not correct to call IVF infertility treatment. I know that makes people bristle, so let me explain, please, before you turn me off. Um, IVF is a workaround for infertility. So if you have issues with your fallopian tubes to where, conception can't happen because sperm can't get through to fertilize an egg, IVF can work around those issues. It can also work around some issues with, low sperm count and low motility and that sort of thing, because they can select the ideal sperm. But it's not actually getting to the root cause of why you have issues with your tubes, just for one example, or why you have low sperm count. And that's a real problem for a few reasons, because because people aren't actually getting healthier for undergoing IVF. In a lot of instances, you're becoming less healthy for undergoing IVF, because especially for women, it involves a lot of injections of hormones so that they can retrieve eggs and kind of line up your cycle with when you're going to have an embryo implanted and that sort of thing. And so those wreak havoc on women's physical and mental health. And so we're not getting women healthier. In fact, we might actually be getting them unhealthier for having them undergo IVF. And none of it is actually addressing the root cause of why you're not getting pregnant, because fertile, healthy, adult bodies should be getting pregnant from having unprotected sex. And if that's not happening, then we need to really dig down into why, because everything in our bodies is oriented towards procreation. So that's a real sign that something is wrong, and we're doing a real disservice to couples and especially to women by not digging in and figuring out why aren't you getting pregnant.
Well, and one other thing that you didn't happen to mention, but isn't IVF a very expensive procedure?
Yes, absolutely. And that's the other thing too, is we're having couples take out, second mortgages on their homes in some cases. And it's not a guarantee. You could spend 20, 30, 40, $50,000 on multiple cycles of IVF and still not go home with a baby in your arms. And so it's, I think on average still, it takes, 3 cycles to be successful, depending on your age. If you're younger than 35, maybe not so many, maybe only 2 cycles, but still we're talking at between like $20,000-$30,000 a pop here. We're not talking small change. And that can be really, really hard on a couple who's already dealing with, just kind of the emotional costs of infertility. I mean, I myself, my husband and I experienced it. It's not something you'd wish on anyone in your life. And then on top of it, we're putting financial strain on top of all of that. And then the health and hormonal strain of the procedure itself for the woman. So it's just this recipe for a lot of stress all the way around. And again, we're not actually treating infertility at the end of the day with any of it.
And with regard to that, is there an index of doctors? Because I think that a lot of us have become accustomed, and again, I haven't confronted this personally, but where the doctors seem to say, oh, well, if you can't get pregnant, just keep trying.
Yeah.
So it seems that you're making reference to some doctors who are maybe more affirmative about focusing on infertility.
Yep.
Does your organization have an index of doctors that are committed to this?
Yeah, you can go to naturalwomanhood.org, get help, and then find a doctor. And we've got a database where you can search. And there's also lists of different medical organizations, professional organizations that specialize in restorative reproductive medicine. You can go on their websites and learn more, find their registered doctors. So yeah, it's more available than it ever has been, and that's really fantastic, but it's still a very small field. So you do kind of need to know where to look, and naturalwomanhood.org is a great resource for that. And yeah, we're an informational organization at our core. We're not trying to tell you what to do or make decisions for you. We're just there to give women the information that they need to make informed decisions, because we really and truly believe that you can't really have informed consent in your healthcare if you don't have some kind of degree of body literacy. So some kind of understanding of what's going on in your body. So again, that's where the twofold: learn to chart your cycles, and find a doctor who appreciates that information for just how powerful it is.
You touched on an important issue earlier about the timing of life today. Is that more women than men are graduating from college, which means more women have careers and professional lives. And a lot of times that results in the career decision to delay having babies. Is there a particular marker you'd say to women in our audience, hey, if you're approaching this age, you really need to start thinking about checking in for that first time, because it might get harder later?
I think in general, I mean, we have a program called Period Genius at Natural Womanhood that we developed that teaches girls. It's targeted for girls from 8 to 12 to learn how to pay attention to their cycle and start to kind of understand what cycle tracking is, so that they have that good body literacy as they get older. So I think you're never too young and you're never too old to start learning how to read the signs of your body and the signs of your cycle. If you're someone who's, hasn't found the right person yet and you're on a career path, you will be really well served by learning to chart your cycle. And if there are issues that you're having, if you've been struggling with painful periods, if you've been struggling with heavy periods, if you've had really bad hormonal acne or headaches, those are all signs that there's something off with your hormonal balance in your cycle. And you would do very well to take care of it now, even before there's a man in the picture, because you're doing it to take care of your health, yes, and then also to protect and preserve your future fertility. So if you stay healthy now, we don't need to be doing these crazy like egg freezing. The ART industry is really pushing egg freezing on young women. They're fear mongering, and exactly for these reasons that, oh, you're not going to find anybody until you're in your 30s because you're focusing on your career right now. So let's just freeze your eggs and then you won't have to worry about any of that. It's so wrong. It's so false. Egg freezing might actually damage your fertility because of all the drugs they pump you full of to be able to release 20 eggs at a time, which no woman's body was ever meant to do naturally. And so they fear monger, and they're getting women to do this. And it's so that they can guarantee more IVF clients down the road. I mean, just they're profiting off of fear. This just like general sense of fear that women have about their fertility, when really the best thing a woman could do would be to learn her cycle, chart her cycle, find a great doctor trained in restorative reproductive medicine who can get to the bottom of any issues with your health early on, so that you can develop those good habits and that good body literacy, so that when the time's right, you can hopefully get pregnant with ease.
Yes, and I've heard one thing related to part of that is that if you have a baby prior to age 40, that it is easier to get pregnant and maybe have another baby after 40. And these are for the women that have really waited to the age 38 or 39 and said, hey, it's time to do that.
Yeah, I don't know any data around that, but definitely like anecdotally, I see friends who have been having babies, starting in their 20s and through their 30s, who are still able to have babies if they want into their very early 40s. So there does seem to be something there that like the earlier you start, the more longevity you get out of your fertility lifespan. It'd be interesting to look into the data around that. Actually, I haven't either, but I definitely know, like anecdotally, that speaks very true of the women that I know who are still having babies into their early 40s.
Well, I gotta say, I stay tuned into this stuff. Of course, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a PhD.
Me neither.
But I I pay attention to a lot of, reports and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
all that. Grace Stark, been great having you. Tell our audience one more time how they get more information about you and your important work.
Yeah, at naturalwomanhood.org, you can find just all sorts of information about women's health, but all from what really sets us apart as an organization, as it's all from the standpoint of women's bodies are good, they're healthy, or we can get them healthy by respecting your fertility and your female physiology, that women are not just small men, that you're not some like broken inferior version of a man, and that you can get real, respectful, dignified help that respects your fertility and your dignity as a woman. And it starts with body literacy, and we can teach you where to find someone to train you in fertility awareness methods so that you can learn to chart your cycle. And again, where to find a doctor who's trained in these methods. And then also, if you're interested in the Period Genius program I mentioned earlier, maybe you have a daughter or a granddaughter who's a preteen or a young teen who you want to give the gift of good body literacy and good understanding of her body and her cycle. Check out our Period Genius program, which you can also find at naturalwomanhood.org. And we have a podcast, the Natural Womanhood Podcast. Got to plug that too.
Sounds fascinating.
The defense rests, Your Honor.
More senseless deaths in Chicago. Speaking of public failures, Chicago experienced a bloody holiday weekend marked by 102 people who were shot, including 17 fatally, according to police reports. The weekend was a 27% increase in shootings over last year's 4th of July weekend. This represents a failure of state and local governments to effectively provide safety for its people. Criminals need to be locked up, end cash bail. Take note of the feds keeping Sean Combs locked up pending trial and even post-trial. The death penalty, the ultimate crime deterrent, needs to be administered quickly in appropriate cases. No more 20 years on death row with endless appeals. I don't want to keep hearing that guns are the problem. People don't respect the law are the problem. Criminals carrying guns are the problem. Drugs and related crimes are not being effectively shut down. Illinois and Chicago are sanctuary state and city, respectively. Allowing illegals to run wild through the streets and even preventing ICE from taking them into custody is the problem. As an educator, I also observe that those who are educated have more options in our society. They do not have to engage in crime because they have more employment options. Improving our ghastly public education system throughout the country could be a significant step toward reducing crimes of all kinds. Arrest the Democrats who are encouraging law violations. It's got to stop with regard to violence against ICE representatives and agents.
Order in the court.
Hey, if you've enjoyed our content here on Saving America, like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Dr. Dave Saves America.
This session is adjourned.
Thanks for joining me for Saving America. If you have questions or comments, please find me on various social media sites. I'm Dr. David D. Schein, and I will see you next week.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honored to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA-Global-TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, We're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.